welcome everybody to our November North Yorkshire Safeguarding Children Partnership Development in Safeguarding Learning event. For those of you who are new to the learning event, so who haven't met me before, my name's Kat Morrison. I'm a Policy and Development Officer for the partnership. We are so thrilled that so many of you have come to join us today, and we're here today to talk to you about the voice of the child. So this is a piece of practice guidance and a toolkit that we have developed, and we're going to be taking you through for the next hour. We will get you away for 1 o'clock. So just some housekeeping. We will be recording the session. This is because we edit the session down and we add it as a resource to our YouTube channel. That's normally done within the next couple of days, and we will make sure you get a copy of that link as well, but it is on our YouTube channel. If you follow us on YouTube, it's just at NYSCP1, I think, and like and subscribe, you will get a notification. If I can ask you to keep your microphones on mute and ideally cameras off, it just helps, especially because we've got a really large group today. But please do use the chat function. If you've got any questions, please add them in. Steph is going to keep an eye on the chat and will kind of pipe up and let me know if there are any questions that need addressing as we go through. Likewise, she will be kind of sharing any relevant links through the chat as well. You will get a copy of the slides, and all the slides have the links embedded, so you will get this as a resource after attendance as well. What we will ask is, once the session has been completed, we always find feedback particularly useful, so you will receive an email through from NYS, and they will ask you to complete a post-course questionnaire. Once that's done and submitted back to NYS, you'll obtain your certificate of attendance. I'm aware there's groups of you in that are joining us, so if you haven't registered via NYS, that's absolutely fine. If you can just please drop your email address in the chat, if you're in kind of like a group or you're watching a few of you. Just want to make sure that we get to hear your feedback as well, and you'll get your certificate of attendance. So, as I've said, today we'll be looking at the development of our new Voice of the Child toolkit. We will spend most of the session looking at some of the theory behind the voice of the child, why it's so important, why it comes up time and time again in local and national learning reviews. We'll look at what we mean actually by the voice of the child and what some of the barriers are that we may encounter to really hear it. And then towards the end, I'm going to take you into the toolkit. I'm not going to spend too much time going over the toolkit, but I will run you through some of the key elements of each section, including a key bit at the end, which is kind of what to think about when engagement is particularly difficult. We'll finish by looking briefly at a couple of examples that we have on the webpage, and then I will leave you with some questions for reflection. There are a couple of videos kind of dotted throughout the presentation. That is primarily to give my voice a bit of a break, but I think there are some really good video resources that kind of tell the importance of this much better than I can. Just to leave this up on your screen for a couple of seconds, these are the QR codes to our resources. Steph will hopefully put the links in the chat as well, so you can click on them. To the left with the orange QR, we have the link to our webpage, and then embedded in our webpage is our PDF toolkit, which is the QR on the right. If you want to, and feel like it will be useful, please feel free to kind of pull these documents up on your phone or on a second screen if you've got them, and you can be looking at them as I'm talking through some of these key elements. Okay, so just before we get going, very quickly in the chat, just give me a couple of words in terms of what we mean by the voice of the child. So think about all the different elements of voice and what that could possibly mean. And if you want to throw some ideas into the chat, that would be really helpful. Who's fastest first? And scroll down on my chat. Yeah, brilliant. So we've got lived experience, non-verbal communication, engagement, comments and inputs, wishes and feelings, making sure they're heard, picking up on their perspective, lived experiences, capturing lived experiences. Can include observations if the child's not verbal, really listening to what the child's got to say. Fantastic. The children being able to tell you what things are like for them in a safe way. Lovely. Behaviour, lived experiences. Fantastic. Thank you very much. So to start you off, I just wanted to kind of share with you a video. This again encapsulates why we're here today in a much better way than I can. So just bear with me while it plays. That's the beginning.
Article 12 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child states, I have the right to listen to and taken seriously.
Listening is not just hearing, but also understanding what someone is saying.
When I cry, I'm talking to you.
When I fall silent, I'm talking to you.
When I'm naughty, I'm talking to you.
When I don't do my homework, I'm talking to you.
When I laugh, I'm talking to you. But are you listening?
It's your legal responsibility to listen to me so that my voice matters. It gives me a chance to express what I'm thinking and how I feel.
But it's not just your job to listen and to act on what you hear. It's my right to be heard, and it's also your job to explain that to me.
What's stopping you from listening is the excuses that you're too busy.
It's the idea that my voice holds less validity than yours, because you're the adult. It's not my fault if listening to me and working with me to help me understand what's happening slows things down for you.
The consequences of not listening are not just causing me to lose confidence in my own voice. Not listening leaves me vulnerable.
I might hurt myself or run away because I'm scared.
What if I get into danger because you didn't take time to listen to something that you should have?
I listen to others to show that as one person to another, they have my respect and I care about what they have to say.
I believe that the best way to be listened to is to listen to other people.
When I'm not listened to, it makes me feel insignificant.
It gives me the impression that my voice doesn't matter and that I have no role to play in the future of my own life.
Give me time to open up and share with you.
Sometimes my voice needs influence. Help me with this.
When you find new ways to hear, you hear new things.
Give me an opportunity to share my voice with others, and when I can't, share my voice for me.
If I can't talk or choose not to, then you legally become my advocate.
Listening to other people opens up my perspective.
Regardless of whether we agree or disagree.
I feel like I've helped them to know what they say counts.
When I feel listened to, I feel respected and I feel cared for.
It helps me to trust you with what I say and helps us work together.
Show respect for each other, create a safe space to talk, and listen where you and I feel equal.
I may be young, but we can stand shoulder to shoulder.
Ask me what I want. I need your support and someone to help me fight my corner.
Tell me what your decision will be before you go ahead with it.
Explain how this affects my life and tell me how the things I've shared helped you make this decision.
Don't keep secrets from me. It's my life you're talking about. I might not understand everything yet, but I'm the one living it.
I love that video, and for me that kind of phrase of when we find new ways to hear, we hear new things really resonates with me, and that is why we're here today. But I just kind of wanted to start off a little bit more kind of looking at some of the reasons why we're here. Everybody here in this virtual room will have heard the term voice of the child. We probably know how important it is. You know, we saw from the chat, you understand the various kind of elements and nuances of the voice of the child, and you know why we need to do it. But time and time again, we see from national and local reviews of cases that the voice of the child is not heard or considered, or not heard and considered enough. So an NSPCC report reviewed a series of serious case reviews between 2019 and 2023, where practice issues around hearing the voice of the child were identified as a key factor. So these are all the factors that we are going to be having a little bit more look at in more detail throughout the session. But the report fundamentally told us that children are not seen or heard enough. Children are not seen frequently enough or asked about their views and feelings. Professionals will sometimes rely too heavily on an adult account or assumptions rather than kind of hearing that direct voice from the child. There were barriers to communication, and these weren't necessarily challenged. So practical and emotional barriers, for example, fear, disability and trauma, which we will look at throughout the next hour, these weren't adequately addressed. And silence or avoidance, or that, you know, disengagement, was often misinterpreted wrongly as a young person not communicating with you. A child's voice was not always seen to be reflected in practice, so children's views were not consistently included in assessment plans or reviews, and their lived experiences are not always central to the decision making around them. It highlighted a need for skilled, trusted relationships. You know, children are more likely to share when they feel safe and respected. I'm not telling anybody anything new here, but I think it's useful to just kind of hear what's being captured in this report. And building trust takes time, consistency and emotional availability. And it's about understanding the different forms of communication. Children will communicate in many ways: behaviour, play, art, silence, body language, and professionals need training and tools to interpret these forms of expression. So another thing that I just kind of wanted to share with you was, you'll all be aware of the 2022 Child Protection Practice Review Panel, and they released the Child Protection in England document. This review set out the recommendations and findings for national government and local safeguarding partners to protect children at risk of serious harm, and it examined the circumstances leading up to the deaths of Arthur Labinjo Hughes and Star Hobson, and considers whether their murders reflect wider national issues in child protection. In the report, we saw thematic issues in relation to hearing and understanding the voices of Arthur and Star and the abuse they experienced in the lead up to their murders.
Yeah.
Can I just ask that everyone goes on mute, please? Thank you.
Exactly that. But when you've got a guru at the end.
The report highlighted that children's voices were not heard or prioritised. So both Arthur and Star showed signs of distress and disclosed abuse in different ways, but their voices were not acted upon or taken seriously. And professionals often relied on the accounts of the adults around Arthur and Star over the children's own words and behaviours. Behaviour was misinterpreted, so Arthur was often seen as withdrawn, and this was misread as poor conduct rather than necessarily trauma or a sign of abuse. And Star's injuries and emotional responses were explained away by the adults around her, and her voice was lost in the noise of these conflicting narratives. Practitioners didn't dig deeper when the children's accounts or behaviours raised concerns, and there was insufficient challenge to parental explanations, and the children's lived experiences were not fully explored. The review stressed the importance of seeing, hearing and understanding the child's world, not just through words, but through observation, play and behaviour, called for better training and support for professionals to engage meaningfully with children, especially when they're frightened or unable to speak openly. Another one that I wanted to kind of touch on, there are quite a lot of national reports on this, and I think it's really important that you see some of the kind of key learning from this. But the Safeguarding Practice Review Group released in November 2024 some powerful insights into the value of hearing children's voices based on the lived experiences of children who are sexually abused in the family environment. Now, I could spend a full hour going over this report, but there are a few key points. The report showed an over-reliance on children to verbally report abuse. with an onus being on practitioners to proactively speak with children when there are concerns and be curious and really kind of observe that behaviour and those changes. Some children in the review described waiting for somebody to ask them about their lives so they could tell them. There's a quote on the screen there, and there's another quote which said, "I couldn't talk about the sexual abuse. It was just too difficult. I wanted them to notice and to ask me what was going on." So that just really highlights a child's voice isn't always going to be what a child is directly telling us. Children often try and tell us, but they're not necessarily heard. Many children will attempt to disclose in their own way, but signals were missed or dismissed. And the report shared that in many situations, children had actually directly told practitioners that there was abuse, and they weren't necessarily believed. Or if that young person then retracted what they'd said, that retraction wasn't explored or challenged or was taken to be more credible than the original disclosure. In our local case reviews, and in local case reviews from across many other local authorities, the voice of the child continues to be seen as a recurring area for development. Recent reviews in North Yorkshire have included a review we did in 2024 of non-accidental injuries in non-mobile infants. So the full learning for these cases can be seen by clicking on the links. They're embedded in the slide, and I'm going to ask Steph to put the link to our Learning for Professionals page in the chat, where you can see all of the summaries of our serious case review learning. But in the case of this one with Voice of the Child, the report highlighted the importance of capturing the voice of babies and infants, and exploring that being cognizant of the ways that babies and infants can communicate with us. Think eye contact, facial expressions, interactions with adults crying. And it also stressed the importance of observation to fully capture the voice of young children. From this review, our Ask Me campaign was born, which focused on developing relationships with new and expectant parents, and to have conversations with them to allow them to openly and comfortably share their experiences and challenges, rather than just directly sharing messages. And that gives that opportunity to again understand what life is really like for those babies. This was similar to the learning we had for a case for Child V, who sadly died while co-sleeping with parents. Child V was subject to a child protection plan, and learning was that more could have been done to capture the lived experiences of Child V through looking at ways to capture their voice through observation, and also in opening up those channels of communication with the parents. Child X was a review that examined the challenging behaviours of a young girl. Now, the girl was not typically engaging verbally and was communicating through her behaviours. These behaviours were considered, but were put down to a learning need, and multiple hypotheses were not always explored. What emerged was that the behaviours were also in part a way of the child communicating the trauma and abuse that was actually happening to her. Another recent audit exploring responses to children who go missing from home and care found some really positive and creative examples of working with young people and capturing their voices. But this was not the case for every young person, and in some cases some young people did not have the opportunity to share their voices through the return to home interview, especially as children may not have necessarily engaged in the process. But when we think about the word engagement, I want you to consider the language and consider whether that return interview was offered at the right time, with the right person, in the right space, to give that young person the real opportunity to share their voice. It also captured the need to explore other ways that voice is heard through behaviour, non-verbal cues, and the very act of not wanting to speak to an adult at all. They are all communicating something. And it also asked us to consider the cultural complexities when exploring the voice of the child, which I will look at in a little bit more detail in a few slides' time. These are just a few examples, there are many, but as a partnership we wanted to develop resources and toolkits that could support practitioners in working with children and young people and capturing their voices. We know it's hard, we know how busy everyone is and the challenges that you face, and we hope that these resources can be a tool to assist you with some of that as and when you need it. So before we go any further, I want to say this. It starts with curiosity. And I encourage you all to explore this concept further through our practice guidance. Steph will hopefully put a link in the chat. And we also did a 1-hour recorded learning event on this, which you can access on our YouTube channel. Professional curiosity is a practice mindset and a communication skill. It involves exploring and understanding what's happening by asking questions and maintaining an open mind. It's about understanding one's own responsibility in managing risk and safety and knowing when to act rather than making assumptions and taking things at face value. Every interaction that we have with children, young people and families provides us with a valuable opportunity to develop meaningful and rich conversations and relationships based on seeing and developing strengths. To do this, we need to actively seek to gain a full and deep understanding of the lives of the people we're working with. Now, some of you are probably sat here thinking, I've done this for years. I've spoken to so many children and captured so many voices. And this session isn't about minimising your expertise. You will all already have your own personal toolkit full of ideas and resources that help you build that connection with a child. And we want what we've produced to help build on that. We want us to consider every child as a unique individual, a child that we need to be curious about and develop our own knowledge and skills in order to communicate with them and hear their voice in the most effective and impactful way. Someone once shared with me a phrase, if you know one child with autism, you know one child with autism. And I think really that resonates with all children. All children are different with their own unique and special way of communicating with us. Our job as professionals is to learn how best to create that connection with each individual child. I want to just spend a minute just touching on trauma and trauma-informed practice. And it's essential for creating safe, respectful and empowering environments where children feel able to share their voices. Trauma-informed practice recognises that trauma, whether from abuse, neglect, loss or adversity, can deeply affect how children communicate, trust adults and engage with services. Trauma can silence children. Fear, shame or confusion may prevent children from speaking openly, and trauma-informed practice helps practitioners interpret behaviour and non-verbal cues as an expression of voice. It highlights that relationships are key. Research shows that the quality of the relationship between practitioner and child is one of the strongest predictors of a positive outcome. Imagine this, you've had a really tough week and someone asks you to share what's going on. Would you open up to a stranger, someone who hadn't taken the time to get to know you, or someone who seemed rushed, distracted, or not particularly interested? Probably not. Most of us only share our personal stories when we feel safe, respected, and understood. It's exactly the same for children. If we don't invest in building trusting and positive relationships, their voice will remain silent. Training gives us tools to create that safety, to listen without judgment, to notice the unspoken, and to respond in ways that show children they matter. Without that foundation, even the best questions or resources won't work because the child won't feel safe enough to use them. We have got loads of information about trauma-informed practice on the toolkit as well. So there is a link on the slide and we have got a section in the toolkit that you can access as well. So just to give you a break from hearing my voice for a few minutes, I just wanted to share this video that again sums up what the voice of the child is in a fantastic way.
So when we think about the voice of the child, there are so many different elements to consider. And the physical voice, the voice that we hear, is just the tip of the iceberg. As practitioners, we work with children who communicate with us verbally and non-verbally, and we have to make sure that we gain an understanding from their perspective.
So children communicate in a variety of ways. From birth, children are using non-verbal communication through eye contact, smiling, crying, laughing, all those small subtle cues that parents are able to pick up on. A child's voice is their way of expressing their feelings, their thoughts, their emotions, and they need that voice to be able to express their likes, dislikes, sensory preferences, and their goals.
So the voice of the child can also be an absence of something as well as a presence of something. So if children and young people aren't showing up, presenting, engaging with us, attending school, attending activities, attending events in the way that we expect them to or in the way that they normally would, that's also a way of them communicating with us and telling us for whatever reason that they don't want to or don't feel like they can be there.
So we know that working with children can offer various different responses across various age ranges, but specifically thinking about infants and thinking about their voice. So infants will show their voices in many different ways, in a variety of different ways, and they do this through the noises, the movements, the responses during interactions that they may have with caregivers. We're thinking about perhaps vocalisations. What is the baby trying to say to us? How is the baby trying to communicate? We know that babies will absolutely be crying, and we know that's everyday part of normal communication for babies. And we're thinking about this baby's ability to vocalise to us or lack of ability to vocalise. So it's really important to note that a silent baby isn't always a happy baby, and we absolutely do want our infants to turn to us at times, especially in times of distress. It tells us very clearly that they need something for us. So an infant that is always silent or passive is something to be really curious about.
Young people might express their thoughts and feelings to others, well, I would say kind of through three ways. The first being unknowingly. So they're not really aware how these thoughts and feelings are bothering them, so they're kind of subconsciously expressing them to other people. Maybe like they look more tired, or they've had a personality change, or something kind of subtle like that that you wouldn't really pick up on. And then I would also say they're subtly hinting it to people, maybe through an action or a message online, but not going to the person and telling them like this is what's happening, like these are my thoughts and feelings, just kind of subtly hinting it towards people rather than having to have a confrontational chat with somebody. And then lastly, I would say when they directly confront those feelings because they don't want to feel like that or have those thoughts anymore, so they go to an adult or a trusted friend and then tell them directly like this is my thoughts and feelings and I don't want to have these anymore or I need help.
The voice of the child is about a lot more than just hearing what children say and asking them what they think. Because we need to remember that not all children can communicate verbally, and children with special needs and additional needs might need to communicate through pictures or sign or some other communication. But essentially the voice of the child is about understanding what the experience of being that child is like for that child.
Okay, so listening to the voice of the child is not just good practice. It's a fundamental right and a cornerstone of effective safeguarding. It's our legal and moral duty. Article 12 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child asserts that all children have the right to express their views on matters concerning them, and that those wishes and views should be taken seriously. When we listen to children through words, behaviour, play or silence, we show them that they matter. This builds trust, strengthens relationships and creates a culture where children feel safe to speak up. Importantly, children are the experts in their own lives. They offer unique perspectives that adults may not see, and when we take them seriously, we not only protect them better, but we also empower them. Children are the most important people in the safeguarding picture, and their voice should guide every decision. They are the experts in their own experience, and only they can truly know how they feel or what life is like for them. Imagine someone writing a report or an assessment about your life without having deep, meaningful interactions with you and hearing what you had to say. How accurate do you think that representation of you would be? And how would you feel about the person that wrote it? Would you want help from them if they had identified an issue? Listening, we know, supports brain development and emotional safety, especially in early years. And we've got to understand that young people offer a different and unique perspective that adults may overlook or misunderstand. Listening builds a culture of safety. When we listen to the small things, children are much more likely to tell us the big things. And being heard helps children feel safe, understood and valued. So we've probably got some on the call today, but we have a half-termly practitioner forum where we link in with our frontline practitioners. They've been really pivotal in the development of our toolkit, and we asked them why they felt it was important, and this is a couple of quotes of why they felt the voice of the child was so important. They shared, only they know their lived experience. so they can be the centre of decision making and so they can feel safe, heard and understood. But if it was so easy to get right, why does this keep coming up? Why are we here today? Well, there are some key barriers to hearing the voice of the child. We've heard it already, but time and observation demand is a big one. Listening to children and listening to babies and young children, or children that require dedicated time to observe and interpret non-verbal cues, can be challenging in busy environments. It can take a lot of time, and it can also take time to build and develop a meaningful relationship with a child so they want to communicate their voice with you in the first place. There can be assumptions about capacity. So children's ability to express themselves is often underestimated based on age, developmental stage, disability or communication style. We can see adult-centric decision making, so professionals may give more weight to the views of parents or carers, as we saw with Arthur and Star, or those other adults around them, even when they conflict with the child's needs. We see information filtered through adults' own agendas. Adults may interpret children's views through their own experience or context and miss the child's true perspective. And we see that lack of professional curiosity, a failure to explore what a child's behaviour or silence may be communicating can lead to missed opportunities for support. We still sometimes see that use of jargon. So professional language can be confusing or intimidating for children, limiting their ability to engage. And we see that underrepresentation of marginalised voices. So children with disabilities, mental health needs, those seeking asylum or from ethnic minority backgrounds, or those who identify as LGBTQ+, are more likely to be overlooked or misunderstood, which leads us nicely onto our next slide. So this looks at kind of culturally competent practice. And again, taken from information from the Safeguarding Review Panel, this is a key area for consideration. Race, cultural identity and ethnicity is not something that's always curiously explored, and we need to take responsibility for informing our work with the sufficient knowledge and understanding to understand this. This national report, which was shared, it's called It's Silent in the bottom right-hand corner, shares the experiences of 53 children from Black, Asian and mixed heritage backgrounds who were subject to safeguarding practice reviews between 2022 and 2024. It highlighted that children's voices were often absent or minimalised in reviews, particularly when their experiences of racism or cultural identity were not acknowledged or explored. Cultural and racial identity was frequently overlooked in assessments, meaning that children's lived realities were not fully understood or reflected in decision making. It can sometimes feel like there's a fear of getting it wrong, or being worried to ask questions in case it offends someone, or worried about saying the wrong thing. But my information and advice to you here is, if you don't know, ask. Get a family or young person, a professional or a community to explain what their race, culture and ethnicity means to them and who they are, to gain that fuller understanding of their life using their voice and their language. When looking at the voice of the child, children's voices are not universal. How children communicate verbally, non-verbally, through behaviours or creative expression can vary significantly across cultures. Assumptions can silence those voices, so practitioners must avoid defaulting to dominant culture norms or assuming shared values. For example, assuming a child is white British without checking records or context can lead to missed insight and inappropriate responses. An inclusive practice builds trust. When children see that their identity is reflected in the ways professionals engage with them, they are much more likely to feel safe and empowered to share their views. Okay, so we've spent quite a bit of time looking at the theory of the voice of the child and some of the factors to consider of why it's so important. Now I kind of want to spend the rest of the session looking at some of the more practical elements, and this is where the toolkit comes in. So the resource, and you can access it on the QR on the screen, comes in two parts. We've got the web page and then the resource, the PDF, is embedded onto the web page as well. I'm going to take you through some of the main elements of the toolkit. I'm not going to go through it all in a vast amount of detail. Number one, it would be impossible for me to cover in the time. And number two, I don't think it would be particularly helpful for anybody. The hope is that this toolkit is there for you when you need it. There's no need to kind of memorise every page and know what every page is about. It's a resource for you to dip in and look at the information and resources as and when you need to access them. So just to start you off with kind of a couple of key bits that you can kind of pull out or print or add to your notice boards. When we designed the toolkit, we spoke to the practitioner forum and they asked for a handy quick guide to go alongside the toolkit that could be printed out, added to staff notice boards. And this guide is a little bit of an aid memoir of some of those key elements of the toolkit and covers some of those really important bits to consider. So that's there as a kind of a resource for you to print out if you need it. The toolkit also has a quick guide for consideration of questions, so with some additional resources linked. This follows on from a section dedicated to asking questions and appreciative inquiry, with additional information on tools like scaling questions and turning questions into conversations. This part also has a section on observation, which is a really powerful tool in understanding the lived experiences of a child, including what to look for, how to record, and most importantly, how to reflect on your observations to really understand what that means from the point of the voice of a child. Throughout the toolkit, we've looked at information and resources based on ages and stages of child development, but I really want you to use this at your own discretion. Build the relationship with the child and understand them as an individual rather than assuming that they will fit to a particular stage, and then use the toolkit to explore the resources that may assist you in capturing their voice and lived experiences. So we've talked a lot about the importance of understanding the voice of babies and newborns, and as I've mentioned before, this is something that comes up regularly in safeguarding reviews. This consideration of voice of a child who can't yet communicate verbally or may not even have been born. For those children who've not been born, it's very much about anticipating and advocating for their needs and understanding the family dynamics and the circumstances. Once a baby has been born, they have their own incredible and unique ways of expressing how they're feeling and what they do and don't want. Their voice is self-expression, which can be demonstrated in lots of ways, and we capture that on the toolkit page. There's lots of things to look out for. There's lots of clicks for resources and additional information that you can access on that page as well. As children move into the toddler years, so again, we're approximately 1 to 3, but please kind of take that loosely. Their communication, emotional and social development rapidly evolves. Capturing the voice during this stage requires adapting your approach to match their growing but still limited verbal and emotional expression. So many things to consider to explore the voices of children in this stage. The consideration of language skills and other forms of expression, for example, through play, body language, interactions with peers and other adults, their interaction with spaces and the things around them, for example, toys. And we've put lots of examples and resources in the toolkit to consider at this stage. As children grow and move through primary to teenage years, their ability to express themselves can become more sophisticated, but equally so do the challenges they may face in being heard. It's important to look at resources to support you in capturing their voice that are developmentally sensitive. Play and creativity are still important factors, but again, build on this with what their interests are. There are lots of resources for children of this stage, and we've highlighted them in the toolbox. We link a social work toolbox, which I'm sure most of you will know and use, but this has a wealth of sheets and activities. But with all of this, I would say be creative. There are lots of ideas that we've included that you can kind of use as jumping off points or ideas in thinking about games, think about photography, technology, anything like that to support young people. As children move to adolescence and that transition to adulthood, it's really important to continue to facilitate their voice. This applies to all ages and stages, but be aware of time and context. So think about if you're meeting with a young person, Are you pulling that young person out of their favourite lesson or their favourite sporting event to talk to you? Are they really going to talk to you if they would much rather be somewhere else? Relationships are key at this stage, and it's important to build trust and be reliable and be there when you say you're going to be there. Validate and empower young people and how they communicate with you. Even if they choose not to communicate with you, that is their choice. And be curious as to what that decision may be communicating. Be mindful of language. Are you reflecting the language the young person is using? Are you aware of their gender pronouns and how they like to be addressed? Again, don't be afraid to ask and acknowledge if you get it wrong. I once worked with a young person who was gender fluid, and I was worried about getting it wrong in terms of gender pronouns. So I had a conversation with that young person and said, how best can we proceed with this? So we came up with an activity which was a genderbread man, which some of you may have used before, which was just a way for that young person to communicate how they were feeling on that particular day and what pronouns to use. So again, back to the culturally competent practice, it's about asking and not feeling that fear of getting it wrong. Following up from this, we spoke to some of our young people's groups from across North Yorkshire, and they shared why listening to their voice is so important. So there's some lovely quotes on here. I won't read them all. Someone said, show me that you're listening. Don't take notes constantly. Don't be looking down all the time. When I feel like I've been listened to, it makes me feel really happy inside, like I matter to people and I'm seen. When I feel like I've not been listened to, it makes me feel like I'm not worth listening to. I think that says it all. But we'll share those slides with you so you can kind of capture all those quotes. As part of the Children's Commissioner's Big Ask, children with special educational needs and disabilities were very clear about the challenges they faced and what they wanted. Children with special educational needs and disabilities are less likely to feel safe, more likely to feel lonely, often do not have their needs identified early enough, and young people want to be understood, seen and heard. As part of the UN rights of the child, all children, regardless of ability, have the right to express their views, be heard and be involved in the decisions that affect them. Children with special educational needs and disabilities may face additional barriers to being heard and understood. Therefore, it is essential to make intentional, creative and flexible approaches to listening to them. We can ultimately promote dignity, inclusion and better outcomes for their support needs. So we have to broaden our definition of voice, which is why we've, a lot of what we've talked about today. Think of gestures, eye gaze, behaviour. We use supportive tools, which again we've added onto the toolbox page. Creating safe environments, thinking about social stories or visual schedules so they can understand what to expect. Work with trusted adults who know and understand the child's needs and can help you capture their voice. Be patient and aware that extra time may be needed for processing and response. And finally, celebrate and embrace the strengths and preferences of the child. Let them take the lead based on their interests. Now, just moving on to the use of technology, whether we like it or not, technology offers a powerful and flexible tool for working with children and young people to amplify their voice. It works because it offers young people a digital confidence. Many young people are more comfortable sharing their thoughts online than in person. It can offer accessibility. Technology can support children with communication needs through visual, audio and interactive formats. And it can offer anonymity and safety. Online platforms can offer a sense of privacy, control and encourage honest expression. So some examples include pictures and digital storytelling apps, allowing children to express views and feelings in a narrative that they may feel is more playful or safe. Think about things like voice note diaries, and they can capture spontaneous, authentic reflections in real time, and tools like Mind of My Own. Emojis, again, quick and non-verbal, really good visual prompts. And the use of AI can be more suitable for children who, again, feel more comfort in a digital space. But I would add the caveat that it is really important when using technology to be mindful of online safety and ensure that technology is used without compromising privacy, consent all that emotional safety. And we've linked to our online safety guidance in there as well. So we've all been there, working with children when engagement is a real challenge and it's tough. So what to do? What I would say is respect all forms. Even not talking to you is them communicating, and be considerate of what they're trying to tell you. Show consistency and presence. Show them that you are there for them and give them your full attention. Ask yourself, have a little reflection. Have I explored enough ways for this child to express themselves? Seek advice. Speak to people who know the child and how best to communicate with them. I worked years ago with a child who I really struggled to communicate with. I spoke with his school teaching assistant, who showed me that he loved a particular Pokemon book. So the next session I asked him to show me it, and from then on we communicated mostly via the format of Pokemon characters. Lots of opportunities for questions and skills and strengths. So that was a really nice tool. And think about, is the environment right? Is the context right? Have you pulled them out of their favourite lesson? Are they just come out of a lesson that they find particularly stressful? Think about the places and spaces where they will feel the most comfortable. But what I would say is, please remember to always be kind to yourself. This can be really tough, especially when you are finding it really hard to engage with a child, to hear and understand their voice. And it's because you're coming at it from a place of care. Sometimes you won't see the impact that being there and listening has had. You may have planted a seed that you never get to see grow. So I'll give you an example of a young person I worked with years ago. And I always felt like I wasn't necessarily engaging with this young person. And I had one final session with them before I went on maternity leave. They said they didn't particularly want to work with anyone else, and this, we closed off. And I really felt like I hadn't necessarily got anywhere. We'd finished off the session by doing an application for some further education. And then when I returned from maternity a year later, I had a conference and I was there with someone who was at that further education. The young person had attended and they'd written a presentation on someone that had changed their life. And they wrote that presentation about me because I was the one person who showed up and listened. So you're not always there to kind of see the outcome of what you've done, but showing up and being there makes the difference. So just a couple of bits to finish off. On the website, we do have a section with a few little examples. Again, this was based on what practitioners felt would be particularly useful. A nice section to dip in and out of to grab some ideas. So I've just kind of pulled out Amari's emoji diary. So you can see here Amari's in foster care. She finds it hard to trust adults and often says, I don't know, when she's asked how she feels. Her social worker introduces an emoji diary. Amari can tick or circle how she feels with no pressure to explain, but over time she starts to add little notes or may mention like she felt safe today or she missed her sister. And that gives the social worker the chance to notice patterns and helps them guide some conversations and build on that idea of what she wants in terms of care planning. If we look at Maya, Maya is a baby in foster care, can't speak, but her carers want to ensure her needs and preferences are understood and respected. Her foster care and health visitor use daily observation journals to track Maya's cues, how she responds to different people. They note her body language, facial expressions and vocalisation, and they use a baby voice template to record what Maya might be communicating. So I smile when I hear soft music, or I cry when the room is too bright. This shows that pattern emerges, showing Maya prefers quiet, low light environments and responds well to gentle touch and lullabies. And these insights are shared in her care planning meeting and including her sensory needs and met. Transitions are handled gently. Okay, so there you have it. We're coming to the end of the presentation. There's a couple more slides, so please don't leave just yet. But what I wanted to leave you with was some questions for reflection, something for you to go back and discuss with your teams. You will have this recording, you will have the toolkit, you'll have the resources, but what would be really helpful for me is that this learning continues to be disseminated. So we've put 4 questions in there that I would like you to think about and discuss with your teams and take away and kind of have those conversations. Think about, why does the voice of the child matter in your role? What helps you feel safe and willing to share your own story? What barriers might stop a child from sharing their voice? And how can you show a child that their voice has been heard and acted upon? And then one final question, which I would like you to consider and put in the chat, which would be really nice, is if I can ask you to have one practical change that you will make today that will strengthen how you capture and act on the voice of the child. So if I can ask you to kind of just put that, an answer to that in the chat. While you're doing that, I'm going to leave you, going to put one final video on, then we've got a couple of slides after that. But if you can just have a think about that one question, and I'll put the next video on. So this video, I'm going to leave you, which I'm just going to give you like a minute and 30 of it. It's about 5 minutes long. The reason I share it, and it's an incredible video by Norfolk County Council Portage team, is because it radiates joy. I've seen this video probably about 10 times, and every time it makes me smile. And I think when we're thinking about communicating and hearing the voice of the children, we've got to see it from a place of joy, in that it's a wonderful experience. We're privileged to be able to work with children and hear their voice. So this is a lovely video to capture that.
Cut me down. I'm gonna send the blood, gonna drown him out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come. And I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen. I make no apologies. This is me.
Right, I'll stop there. The video is part of the presentation, so you can watch right to the end. But I just wanted to say a final thank you. Hopefully I can come and see what you've put in the chat. I'll leave you with that quote: only those who truly care can hear even when you're quiet. And then just a final slide from me is our key information, and just an ask that we do have these learning events every month. Our next one is in December, and we're going to be looking at the voice, not the voice of the child, we've just done that, intelligence sharing. So we're going to have a really useful session in December, and the value of sharing intelligence. So we hope that you can join us in December. We will be looking at releasing our 2026 learning events as soon as possible, so